Hello, welcome to a new session of the HPP Innovation Week. Thank you to be with us. I'm Carol Tonello. I'm the Commercial and Application Director at Hiperbaric. And in the few next minutes, we will start a new interesting session, I hope, on regulatory compliance in the European Union. And Dr. Elena Ingulia from Chagas in Ireland will be with me for this session. She will be the second presenter, and she will talk about the HPP milk validation. Thank you very much, Elena, to be with us today.
Hi, Carola. Hi, everyone.
Hello. Hello. And Elena will talk about her experience in HPP milk. And previously, my presentation will be more general about the this is my aim for this presentation, if I can say, is to enlighten a little bit about the EU regulation and HPP. This is not so easy to understand and interpret, so I will try to be your guide in this journey if you want to place on the market HPP food. So just had that, don't forget that all the attendees have the access to a chat. If you have any question, you can place your question in the chat. Thank you very much. So I will share my screen. Okay. So, how to understand and interpret the guidelines and the regulation in European Union if you want to commercialize HPP food. First of all, I would like to introduce the level of safety of HPP food in the food industry globally. So we have HPP food on the market for now about 30 years, and we never had any foodborne illness outbreak with HPP food. It represents in Europe, the global production per year is around 350 million kilos, which is about 20% of the global food production. So up to now, we had any problems, but we want to keep, of course, the technology safe. There is nothing really specific for the HPP foods, so I will show which EU food regulation should be useful for the food manufacturer. But first, I would like to explain that in Europe, this is now clear that HPP food is not novel just to be processed with a novel or not so novel process, because this process is now used for more than 25 years, almost 30. Definition of the EU novel food is a food that was not traditionally used or consumed before May 97. So it's newly developed, or it's produced by a new technology or a new process, or it's not traditionally eaten in Europe because the ingredients were not available in Europe, or were not really eaten in Europe before 97. So in this case, HPP would follow, or could follow, under the second category, a food produced using a new technology or a new process. But what is the definition? The definition of the novel food is more complex. This is food that was not eaten in the food in Europe before 1997. but also a food that the new process significantly change the composition or the structure of the food or the food ingredients, affecting the nutritional value, the metabolism, or the level of undesirable substances. What we know for now, more than 20 years, is that HPP doesn't change the composition, the structure, or the nutritional value of the food. So it doesn't fall under the novel food definition. And of course, the food would have to be marketed in Europe, the novel food, but also, I would say, the other food, the traditional food, should not present a danger for consumer, mislead the consumer, or differ from the food or the food ingredients which they are intended to replace. This is definitely not the case for the HPP food. Nevertheless, 1 year before the novel food regulation in Europe in 1996, a guideline that was developed, included by people from Danone and different, a long list of people, food safety authorities and company, show the high pressure strawberry jam as an example of novel food, without giving any really scientific explanation. But in the table you can see here, that was clearly written that it was not sufficiently similar to strawberry jam processed by traditional processes. Well, if you compare the traditional jam, which is heat processed, that's true that the strawberry puree not processed with temperature is really definitely very different from the strawberry jam. Nevertheless, it's very close to the natural strawberry puree. So, which is something that you can find when you smash your strawberry directly at home. So there was not the product, the strawberry HPP puree was not different from the fresh fruit, but was quite different from the heat processed jam. That's true. But this make Danone to present a novel food file for HPP fruit preparation. So this is the only novel food file that was accepted and that was presented for HPP. This was they presented the file in 1998, and they get the agreement of for commercialization, the authorization of commercialization under novel food, with calling the product novel food in 2001. Even if this was just because it was a novel process. And then this has been clearly explained by the German Commission for Food Safety, SKLM, in a publication of 2004. They said that HPP did not cause significant changes in the composition or the structure of the fruit preparation evaluated by Danone. So this has been explained in German, and there is a traduction in English of this publication. So the HPP fruit-based preparation of Danone, those preparations were classified as novel food, even they were not complying with the novel food criteria, because there was no significant change in the composition and the structure of the food preparation. Still then, of course, the things are a little bit confusing, because the only things that is really showing up concerning HPP at EU level, it's the novel food file from Danone. Nevertheless, in other countries, some files were presented, especially in UK in 2002, two files were presented by two different companies, one for fruit juices and the other one for fruit purees, yogurt, and citrus juices. And the Food Standard Agency in UK conclude that the high pressure processing per se is no longer considered to be a novel process. So those products were authorized to be commercialized without any novel food label or novel food authorization, because they were not. That was the same thing in France between 2009 and 2011. Different companies, three different companies presented HPP file saying that, concluding that their products were not novel food. They were ready-to-eat meals, marinated meats, and dry cured meat products. And in 2000, and the opinion of the French food safety authorities were that HPP was not novel food, so the food could be commercialized because they were similar to traditional food. Nevertheless, the problem is that nothing was really went to the EU level. So the only thing that we have between the 2001 novel food from Danone, novel food file from Danone, and I would say right now is the 2018 guidance document on the implementation of certain provision of the regulation of a regulation of 2004 on the hygiene of foodstuff. So if you go to this document, you can see in the section 9.6 that the guidance clarify, well, the legal status of the HPP technology in Europe. So the HPP is not subject to authorization at EU level. So without notification on certain condition of use, HPP is assumed to be authorized. In the context of the novel food regulation, HPP, a new process in general, is not novel just because it's new. It's only if the composition of the food significantly changed. And so it is not expected that food will be subject to authorization under the novel food regulation just because of the use of HPP. So looks clear, except that if you read in the middle in orange color, the member states may decide if prior authorization is required. So it's authorized, except if a member state decides that it's not authorized. And honestly, I don't know I don't know where we should know if a member state does not authorize something. But well, that will be something perhaps we will discuss. With Elena later. So, how to comply the EU regulation? Well, what you have to do is that you have to follow the EU foodstuff and packaging general regulation. Step 2, follow when you develop, you want to commercialize a new products, you determine pressure and time condition, you work on your HACCP plan, you perform a microbial shelf life study, and you ensure that the packaging migration is below the limit. And if it's a food from animal origin, you have to place the ID mark as the other food, but there is something special for the HPP tollers. Okay, so you determine the pressure and time condition to be sure that the food will be safe during all the shelf life and the sensory quality will be preserved. You include this condition in your HACCP plan, which is mandatory for all food processors, the HPP one and the others. You need to keep in mind that HPP is a critical control point only for vegetative bacterium and mold spores. not for the spores of Clostridium or Bacillus, for example. So for to control the spores, the control point need to be low pH, temperature, chill temperature, presence of oxygen, presence of bacteriocins, nitrates, any other option outside of HPP. Which EU regulation, general EU regulation, you have to follow? The one of 2005 concerning the microbiological criteria of foodstuff. In general, this is in Europe absence of Listeria monocytogenes in 25 grams of Salmonella and less than 100 E. coli per gram. This is just after the process. During the whole shelf life, for example, in many products, 100 CFU per gram are authorized for Listeria monocytogenes. But this regulation from 2005 will give you details for each category of products. And then you have to follow the regulation of the plastic material, which indicates which type of plastic can be used for food packaging, and also what are the migration limits for the plastic components, the migration to go from the plastic to inside the food. So you need to ensure that you respect the regulation and the migration is below the limit. I had the opportunity to see quite a lot of studies concerning packaging migration, and I never seen any significant influence on the migration, plastic migration on the food due to the HPP process. The HPP process is a cold process, and in general, the migration is really increased when you increase the temperature of the packaging, not when you increase the pressure. Concerning the food of animal origin, I take the opportunity of this presentation to clarify something. The EU food regulation clearly explained that for HPP product and for the other, the ID mark need to be placed on the product. So if the product is meat, fish, or dairy based, need to be the dairy mark, as you can see, the one, for example, here, with a special number of the establishment or of the plant, need to be placed on the package. The point is, the guidance, the 2018 guidance, precise that if the product is processed in HPP plant or HPP tolling company, HPP toller, if after HPP the product goes back to the producer, the ID mark of the HPP toller could be outside of the pallet. But if it goes, the product goes directly from the tolling company to the retailer, the last company, the last establishment that has processed the food, because HPP is the processing, of course, the last one has to have the ID mark on the product. So in this case, if the product, if you are a food manufacturer, you send to a toller, and if this product is a food of animal origin, this is the ID mark of the tolling company need to be on the final package. So I would say that this is what is really specific to HPP and what is indicated in the guidance. So in conclusion, it looks like quite simple. Then we will see with Elena that the general case is not always the case you face. because it's quite simple, except if your EU country ask for something more. But well, in conclusion, the message I think you have to take home is that HPP is a technology commercialized for 30 years now all over the world, with no history of product recall or consumer health concern. HPP is not novel food per se, so it doesn't need EU novel food authorization just because the food is processed under pressure. The technology has been approved as a lethally process for shelf life extension and pathogen inactivation in many countries like USA, Canada, Switzerland, Japan, or Korea, and it's a safe option for food preservation. HPP is a minimally processing technology which delivers fresh-like foods and contributes this type of food, the fresh food and the fresh-like one, contributes to benefit to the consumer health. So in our mind, HPP food should be promoted by European Union as a safe alternative to ultra-processed food, which we know now that it's proof that its ultra-processed food are not beneficial for the consumer health. So we have now, since now and in the future, we really have to incorporate minimally processing technology like HPP to have safer food on the long term to avoid cancer, allergy, diabetes, disease like that. And HPP is one part of the solution. If you have any question, we can help you at Hiperbaric. Do not hesitate to contact us. We have a special email if you want to write us your question in the future. Of course, you can ask right now in the chat, and it's apps@hyperbaric.com. Thank you so much for your attention. So now I am very pleased to introduce Elena. So Dr. Elena Ingulia is a postdoc scientist at Chagas, the Irish Food and Agriculture Authority. Her expertise includes specialization on novel non-thermal processing technology, novel ingredients, and shelf life evaluation of food. She will talk about her experience of validation HPP milk in Ireland. And Elena, nothing more to add. The floor is yours.
Hi, Caroline. Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you for inviting me here to speak today about my experience. I'm just going to share my screen.
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah. Can you confirm that you see my screen?
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. So, hi everyone. I'm delighted to be here today to in this session, speaking about our experience in the case of using HPP as a processing for milk. In particular, this project originated upon the request of an HPP tolling we're working with here in Dublin, in Ireland, that was interested in fulfill what is a consumer request to have on the market minimally processed or non-thermally processed milk. And therefore, the HPP tolling asked the authorities to give guidelines on how to behave, and that's when we jump into this project as well. So as Caroline was saying, I am a postdoctoral scientist in Chagas, and just to give a little bit of introduction about Chagas, we are the Agriculture and Food Developmental Authority of Ireland. We have multiple locations across the countries, and two are the main centers in Moore Park in Ashtown that are focusing on food. And we do both academic research as well as industry focus type of project. And me in particular, I work in the Advanced Food Technology group, where we are focused on working on a variety of novel non-thermal and thermal processing technologies, focusing on processing as well as extraction. And in particular, in the case of HPP, we work in collaboration with this HPP tolling that has a commercial Hiperbaric unit in which we can perform a trial. So just to fill in on what Carola was saying in terms of the European framework, what is interesting to observe is that maybe differently from other countries, in Europe, we have a lot of fragmentation. In fact, with the exception of few multinationals, we mostly have small enterprises that are mostly active at the national level. And this is somehow, and also this, it's reflected in the fact that we have very different consumer preferences. And especially if we look at the categories, for example, of milk and dairy product, we can see these differences very spread with, for example, in Ireland, a tendency for preference of only pasteurized milk, while in other countries we have different type of processing that are favored. In terms of the novel food regulation that was very well explained and clarified by Carola, what we see is that, however, it seems to be lacking a little bit of a joint position when in terms of classification of new technologies across the member states, since each of the member states can somehow stop or ask for more clarification in terms of approval for a product that has been treated with novel methods. And for example, that we can have countries like Spain, in which a food treated with HPP can be sold without major complication. But if the same food wants to be exported to France, there might be additional requirement needed. And on top of that, of course, the complexity of the food combination and ranges of food product makes it validating new processes potentially challenges, especially for small companies and small industries. So jumping into these case studies, which is the one related to the use of HPP for the non-thermal treatment of milk. If we look back and we look at the literature, we can see that milk was one of the first food to actually be subjected to high pressure processing. In particular, the request of looking at the use of methods apart from thermal processing for milk, it comes from the consumer request that I was saying initially has been increasing of consuming what would be called raw milk, even if, of course, by applying HPP, we cannot call it raw. But in general, on milk that has been not treated with not thermally treated. And there's a very increasing request from the consumer. However, under the European hygiene rules, the member states can prohibit or restrict the placing on the market of milk that has been non-thermally treated. And European countries are free to add certain specific requirement for the selling of this type of milk. And this is because raw milk or milk that has not been thermally processed, in this case, has been identified as a cause of foodborne illness outbreaks, according to the European Food Safety Authority, with 27 illness outbreaks registered between 2007 and 2012. So we can see how the category of milk is extremely regulated due to these potential issues. And that's why there was, when the idea of using HPP for milk came around, the food business operator request some information on the relative authorities. So based on this request from the business operator, we started this project by conducting a feasibility study in which we assessed, even if it's already well documented, but we assess in our own food matrix the ability of HPP to inactivate the key pathogens as also described in European Regulation 2005, in particular Salmonella, E. coli, and Listeria monocytogenes. And we were able to show that HPP could inactivate up to 5 log of these pathogens. However, we did not conduct this study for the whole length of the shelf life, but we only measure it after processing. When we presented this study to the Food Safety Authority Ireland, which operates under EFSA, we were told that a series of other microorganisms would have to be included in our studies. In particular, main hazard of human health that are related to the consumption of raw milk, as well as other potential microbiological hazard that EFSA has identified as potentially transmissible through milk. So as you can see, the list of microorganisms that we have been provided with in terms of showing some sort of action was quite extensive. In particular, what we can see is that among these organisms, we have Coxiella and Mycobacterium, which are the two most thermal resistant non-spore forming pathogens that we can find in milk, for which the thermal pasteurization is designed in order to achieve 5 log inactivation. However, as we are aware, microbial thermal resistance doesn't necessarily correlate with pressure resistance. And this means that perhaps these pathogens are not really the indicator of the efficiency of the technology in the case of high pressure. And regardless of all the studies that have been performed, so far, really, there have been no study pointing out a specific pathogens or pathogenic strains that will limit HPP treatment for milk pasteurization purposes. The one that is a potential candidate is Staphylococcus the aureus that has been suggested due to his high pressure resistance comparing to other organisms. So with this framework in mind, and perhaps a lack of guidance in terms of what would be the requirement necessary to use HPP on milk, we have started validation approach in which we are aiming first to have a pathogen characterization, and in particular using a worst case scenario approach, working with pathogens, with cocktail of pathogens that can show a high resistance to pressure, and in particular performing challenge tests and shelf life studies in which we can prove that the initial condition used in the feasibility studies, which were the use of HPP at 600 megapascal for 5 minutes, are potentially able to inactivate these microorganisms that were the one requested from the food safety authorities. And on top of that, following the model that Australia has used and that is now commercializing HPP treated milk, we are planning to use molecular approach such as real-time PCR to screen milk batches in the farm to going forward and treat with HPP only the milk that screens negative to the presence of pathogens, and especially for all those pathogens that reflect the hygienic conditions in situ and that cannot be easily cultivated and treated in a lab because they don't necessarily grow on agar. This has been a successful model in the case of Australia, and we are hoping that presenting this pathway to the European authorities and going with the Food Safety Authority Ireland would perhaps open the way for potential approval also here. So in summary, the validation approach would be focus on working with a milk from a single farm in Ireland, where hygienic milking practices would be checked and well defined. The idea would be to have a rapid PCR testing for the absence of pathogens, and only when the milk will be considered free of pathogen, then it will be bottled and transported to the HPP facilities for the treatment. So of course, as we can see, we were faced with multiple challenges comparing to what we were expecting the potential approval and safe entry of this product on the market. And some of the challenges that we are faced with were definitely the lack of specific guidance in terms of what are the scientific parameters required in order to establish equivalence for alternative methods of pasteurization, in this case using HPP. We also struggle with finding having to work with so many pathogens, location that were easily accessible, especially from the food business perspective, that were able to work with this amount of pathogens in the close vicinity of pilot and commercial scale unit. Of course, one of the major challenge has to be the cost. So we are supported by funding agencies in this project, but if other food businesses are in a similar position, the cost associated can be quite high, and also this has cost in the final product and the entry to market price point that this milk is going to have. And for example, in Australia, it's still a very high quality and niche type of product that sells, I think, 4 times higher than normal milk. So of course, this also has to be considered. And perhaps in a more generic view, what I feel is still one of the challenges related to the novel processing is that even if HPP is not seen as a HPP application makes food not belonging to the novel food categories, the terminology of a process causing significant changes, it's still causing a lot of confusion, and is perhaps delaying the application of these technologies for the production of safe food at in the European market. So this is what I wanted to present, and I'm happy to discuss it further. And I would like to acknowledge Enterprise Ireland, which is the funding agency, and the HPP tolling, which we are collaborating with here in Ireland. And I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Elena. That was really enlightening. I think your approach is very interesting, and your presentation contrasts, I would say, with mine, because we have the general. I would say the general category and the milk, which is something really special, regulated by each member state in EU, and which is known to be that it could cause possibly outbreaks. So that's very interesting, I think, your study, because it will help to develop this category in Europe. And I hope that the Food Safety Authority in Ireland and EFSA will accept this new way of developing or ensure the food safety, combining processing and detection of lack of pathogen. And Well, I think now we have the time for a few questions. In any case, I want to insist that if you have more question after this presentation, please send your question and we will reply. I guess, Elena, you will be available also if there is something specific
Absolutely.
concerning milk, because you are the EU expert of HPP milk, definitely. Um, uh, so the first question we have is, do you expect considerable differences in the HPP milk if it is skimmed or whole fats, or if the origin is different?
Yeah, that's definitely a good question, and we do expect different, especially, I mean, literature support us in the sense that we know that when the fat content is different in milk, the inactivation efficiency as well of the technology might be affected. So that's why we are planning to work with only one farm in Ireland and really standardize the and have well-defined characteristic of the milk we are going to be using, because we know that this can have effect. Perhaps having the time and having unlimited funding, a whole study looking at different type of milk qualities would be ideal. But yeah, definitely that could be effect. We know milk is also affected by the seasonality. So characteristic of milk can change based on when it's produced. So we will. The idea is trying to have a more broad view as possible, and really define our condition for the type of milk we work with.
Mm-hmm. I'm just adding my questions to you. Um, do you know if in Australia I think in Australia there are whole fat milk, I think, commercialized. So if I
Yes, and
remember well, the shelf life is
I think so.
45 days, and
Yes,
should
I think
be.
so.
Mhm. Sorry.
And they also work with only one variety of milk.
Hmm. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think logically the whole fat milk, the full fat milk, should be the worst case scenario, I guess,
Hmm. Yeah.
or
Ideally, yes,
protecting.
because
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So we'll see the results.
So yeah, um, we have another question. So the other question is, do you think we will have HPP milk approved in the EU in the near future?
That's a great question. I want to be optimistic and say yes, but I don't know exactly what near future means. I think that if we can prove that the safety, if we can prove that standard operating procedure can be put in place, um, uh, this could lead the way for other countries to do the same. I think at the moment, not that many countries in Europe are trying to use HPP for milk specifically application to sold as such. So perhaps it's still, a very obscure and gray area in which we are leading the way. So I hope that if we are able to show and prove good results, this will make it easy also for other countries to take it on board the technology.
Yes, but yeah, that's clear that for milk, especially, which is a special category with special regulation in each European member states, the global global approach is not to be expected soon, but at least
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah.
I would really like to drink the Irish HPP milk as soon as possible. In any case, I think that your validation study is unique in Europe at this time. So it's really an amazing work, and I'm sure that it will help to develop this category in Europe. We have time for last question, which is about the guidelines in Europe. So, which is there any source of guidelines for novel products validation in Europe? So it looks like this one is for me. Well, I have to say that not, but perhaps you can help me for this question, Elena. Do you know any reliable source of guidelines for the novel products validation in Europe?
No, not really. And actually, it's one of the things we've been also struggling with. The countries like in the US, they do have a specific guidelines for food businesses that want to validate the use of novel technologies for the food product, which at least give more structure on what are the key microorganisms, what are the parameters to look for, and I don't believe we have a similar guidelines in Europe that are easily accessible.
Yeah, I faced the same problem trying to help some French customer presenting the files in France in between 2009 and 2011. That was nothing was really clear. What is significantly different, and including the 2018 guidance concerning the regulation. It's HPP is authorized except if a member states need special pre-commercialization authorization. So I would say we really need, in the industry, we really need, I think, clarification. On the other hand, the concern could be that we need clarification, but I would say we don't need restriction. I think your approach concerning processing only pathogen-free milk under high pressure could be a solution if we are not able to validate. But I really would like to see in the future, really from EFSA and the food safety authority of the different member states. I really would like to see them open to new solution for commercialization of HPP fresh-like foods. I think we need that. So, but
Yeah,
I want
definitely.
to let you the last word if you have something to add to this session, Elena.
No, I think you said it all. I agree with what you said. I think we definitely need clarity. Because it's it's very hard even from people that receive the query from the industry to navigate the system in the current status. So I think we definitely need some more guidance and clarity, specifically for novel processing technologies, for at least the major categories of food. And then perhaps having a more case-to-case scenario for a specific condition, but at least an overall overview would really help the industry to grow.
I think so, and I think we should benefit from the file that were presented in different country to bring the information to at EU level, and to take this in account to be able. I think we are not concerned about the safety of HPP, and we would like this to be recognized at EU level, hopefully soon.
Hopefully soon, yes.
Thank you very much, Elena. Really excellent work, and thank you for your nice presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me here.
And so this session is now finished. As we said, if you have any question, please send them by email. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.